Describing the bilateral relationship as exemplary and extraordinary, he speaks of his special friendship with China. Praising China's achievements in poverty alleviation, he expresses the hope that the Chinese miracle will be replicated in his own country. He offers 100% support for the concept of a community with a shared future for mankind, stating that all countries should work together to address global challenges. President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, José Ramos Horta, sat down for an exclusive interview with Leaders Talk.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers sa Mangguan in Beijing. Our guest today is the president of the first newly independent country of the 21st century, Timor-Leste. It is remarkable that China was the first country to establish diplomatic relations with the Southeast Asian state, and bilateral relations advanced to a comprehensive strategic partnership last year. What is driving this rapid growth in bilateral ties? How is Timor-Leste balancing its relations with regional powers such as the US, Australia, Indonesia, and of course China? Here's my conversation with the president of Timor-Leste, José Ramos Horta. President Ramos Horta, it is an honor to have you with us. Welcome to Leaders Talk on China Media Group.
Great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Mr. President, you're not just a witness, but a builder of our diplomatic relations. As early as May 2002, when the People's Republic was the first country to recognize the restoration of the newly independent Timor-Leste, you were the foreign minister signing the communique. And last year, under your presidency, the two countries decided to upgrade their relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And of course, your current trip, your summit with President Xi, deciding to further this relationship even more. What do you think is driving what looks to many in the international community to be the rapid advancement of the relations between China and Timor-Leste?
China is a global power, is the largest economy in Asia, second largest in the world. Over the years, China has pursued several tracks, the strategic track. One is building the Chinese economy to these impressive heights, which make China a global economic power, global financial power. The modernization of its defense force add to that, and that create some jealousy among those who view China as a rival, and sometimes the jealousy is exacerbated, and they try to repeat what was a failure of the 60s and 70s, the so-called China containment. China was never involved in any of the major wars in recent decades, whether the war in Afghanistan, the war in Yemen, in Iraq, Libya, and in more ongoing one in Ukraine. China is the only permanent member of the Security Council that is not involved in an international conflict. So for us, it's a common sense to have a strong relations with an Asian power, Asian country that is also a global power. And I know the history of China, going back many centuries, what China was, then particularly before World War II, after World War II, a lot of upheaval in China. But long before that, wars waged by foreign powers against China, like the Opium War.
The 100 years of humiliation.
Yes, I was going to say that tens of millions of Chinese left the country and to go and look for life in Europe, North America, Latin America, Australia. I follow all of that. And in my own country, in Timor-Leste, there are many Chinese who came from mainland in the 20s and settled there.
Mr. President, you've been coming to China since the what, 70s?
76, the first time.
1976.
I was very young. Winter, like January or February, I looked down to the street. I saw thousands of bicycles, and everybody wearing the same.
Bicycle Nation, that's what we called back then.
Black jacket
the Mao
or
suit.
gray jacket.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you see a bus. God, it's so different in only half a century.
The Chinese modernization, its way of modernizing itself, that is different from conventional Western approaches, that impressed you the most, that you find most remarkable?
Well, it is total elimination of extreme poverty in a country so big, and then moving from a poor rural agriculture economy to a superpower in technology, in medical equipment, and anything. And in my own country, now today, rarely you see a child is barefoot. And you see every child with a backpack, made in China and cheap. And the genius of the Chinese is this. The Chinese, they study the world market. They know there is 2 billion people who are poor, whose purchasing power is like $2, $3, $5 a day. So they produce for this market of throughout Asia, Africa, and even in Europe. Doesn't mean they produce only these shoes and these cheap. No, of course, high tech as well. So only the Chinese can do that, supply the entire planet with goods that are accessible to the poorest people. That is the genius of the Chinese side.
Mr. President, some viewers may not necessarily know this readily, but there's an emotional element to our relationship. As early as 2008, when Timor-Leste wasn't precisely the wealthiest nation in the world, according to World Bank, your country donated some 500,000, that's $500,000 to the quake victims in Wenchuan, Sichuan. And that marks the first foreign donation of your country to a foreign land, of course. And then you led your nation in a national mourning, memorializing the victims of China. Why would you do that? How would you reflect on that moment?
Even though China is 1 million times bigger and richer than Timor-Leste, for us it was a gesture of a friend. So we are poor, but we are going to contribute to help our Chinese friends. It is our gesture of friendship, of recognition of China.
Timor-Leste is located at the eastern end of the Nusa Tenggara Islands in Southeast Asia. The country is mountainous, with coastal plains and valleys, and is rich in oil and natural gas reserves. Agriculture is a significant part of Timor-Leste's economy, with 66% of households engaged in agricultural activities. Coffee, rubber, and red sandalwood are known as the three treasures of Timor-Leste. On the morning of July 28, 2024, President Ramos Horta arrived in Beijing for a 4-day state visit. This is his first visit to China since taking office in 2022 and the first state visit by a Timor-Leste president since the establishment of diplomatic relations. During talks with José Ramos Horta, Chinese President Xi Jinping called President Ramos Horta a founding father of Timor-Leste and a pioneer of China-Timor-Leste friendship. Since establishing diplomatic relations, the two countries have always treated each other with sincerity and provided mutual support, setting an example of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and common development between countries with different political systems, development levels, and historical cultures.
Mr. President, what keywords would you use to define the current state of China-Timor-Leste relationship?
One word I would use: exemplary or exceptional. The bilateral relations between Timor-Leste and China. I believe we continue to expand based on the common understanding, wishes of the two sides. This relationship can expand significantly, My main interest and concern, and that's where China can help tremendously with know-how, expertise, experience, and it doesn't have to be with money, with cash, because we do have a decent sovereign fund derived from our small gas and petroleum revenues. But sometimes one has money, but doesn't really know how to use this money, how to invest properly. So my concern has been, request is for China to give us greater technical support to improve agriculture output, to ensure for us food agriculture sovereignty, to help us with water supplies, to help us with better seeds for agriculture, recover rainwater, come and then down in full speed down the mountains and destroy everything along the way into the sea with the topsoil goes. And so how to retain this water for agriculture, for fish farming, and so on. China can do that with know-how. President Xi Jinping completely agree with that, ready to support more than in the past. It has been ready. There's ongoing agricultural support going on in Timor-Leste right now. Soon after I spoke with Ambassador of China in Timor-Leste about to studying water resources of Timor, Chinese engineers came right away, and they've carried out already engineering studies about water.
So, Mr. President, you talk about better utilization of agricultural lands, better irrigation, capturing rainwater, making it systemic and scientific. This is actually, a few of the areas in the communique, industrial revitalization, infrastructure, agricultural self-sufficiency.
Yes.
You couldn't emphasize this enough. Agricultural self-sufficiency and livelihood.
Yes.
Very important to your heart. Very dear to your heart.
More livestock, fish farming, not just fish in the seas, but fish farming, because Timor-Leste is very mountainous. Most of the people live in the rural areas, and most of the people never eat fish.
Never ate fish?
Never eat fish because they're in the rural areas, no refrigerators, for instance, and no habit of eating fish. So, but if we do fish farming in each village, then we will improve nutrition with more livestock like chicken, ducks. People and children will eat better.
Great proteins, sources of protein.
Yes,
Is that
exactly.
happening with collaboration between China and Timor-Leste?
Yes, some
you see
already
that
happening. Yes, produce more eggs locally, produce more beans. We have a potential to be completely self-sufficient in fruit and vegetables, for instance. In my country, we have at least 10 different types of bananas and almost any kind of tropical fruit. But none of this is industrially produced. Like a family has some few trees and another family has, and then they harvest and take to the local market. Now we need to industrialize, mechanize the agriculture with better seeds, better irrigation, and market access with the government, with Chinese support, building rural roads so that people in the rural areas, when they produce more agriculture goods, they can have easy, cheap access to the market. That's why I very much want Chinese support. I want a Chinese miracle to happen in Timor-Leste.
I think we have a lot to offer, and Timor-Leste has a lot to offer too, now that you've touched upon agriculture. I heard that Timor-Leste produces
Yes.
One hell of a coffee beans.
Yes.
And I want to show our viewers, and to you, Mr. President, this is no stranger to you, of course.
Yeah.
As someone who drinks coffee every morning.
This coffee, I think it's the one.
It's really rich.
In Tetun language or in Bahasa Indonesia, it's coffee luwak. In Tetun is cafe lakuteng. Wild civet cats. It's not cat, it is a marsupial type. The animal, he chew the coffee and then he
Spit it out?
come out with the digestion.
Yeah.
This coffee is very expensive in the world market. 1 kilo of this coffee in Hong Kong, it can cost at least $200 US, sometimes even more.
So what's unique about Timor-Leste coffee? I heard that Timor-Leste is one of the largest producers of certified organic Arabica coffee beans. Yeah. The key words here, certified and organic.
Our coffee, going back at least 150 years, it is 100% Arabica, 100% organic. In 1920s, there was a big pandemic in the world, coffee tree diseases that wiped out coffee trees all over the world, from Latin America to Africa, the Caribbean. The disease called rust. That's a disease that killed the coffee. But then some coffee trees survived in Timor-Leste. Portuguese scientists went to Timor-Leste to study. Based on that study, they literally cloned the coffee from Timor, and they redistributed in Brazil, Colombia, Panama, everywhere. So it was the Timor coffee tree that saved the coffee of the world.
I certainly see the pride in you as a leader of the country who's producing fantastic coffee beans. Talking about your meeting with President Xi, President Ramos Horta, how would you describe him as a leader and as a person now that you've met him?
One is a true statesman, a true global leader, very serene, very serious, who handled very difficult situations with serenity, never calling names, abusing any country, even those who abuse them, abused China, reacted with serenity, with class. It shows he is the best leader. China that mediated between Saudi Arabia and Iran. We had a Paris Agreement in the COP21 in Paris. China is the only one that has maintained steady leadership. So we are impressed by that because we live in the periphery of the world. Periphery economically, financially, and so on. But the periphery suffer more because of our fragility when powers like the US, instead of working with other powers like China to address many of the world's problems, no, they create this new anti-China sentiment. And there is almost a consensus that's almost fashionable in Washington to be anti-China.
And you once said that the UNGA last year in September that the China menace theory, the propaganda of China threat, is unjustified and unwarranted.
Entirely unjustified. I did not consider China to be a threat. Quite the contrary, and even and I support the One Belt, One Road initiative. I think that's very important for the global economy, for Asia to better, faster connect with Europe and vice versa, to bring more prosperity to all of Asia and to Europe.
Mr. President, you've spoken so often about what you believe to be the true intention of China globally, that you think is oftentimes misunderstood by the commentators, the political elites in the West.
Well, there are also many people in the West, like in Europe, are totally rational about it. They are not anti-China of any sort. This kind of emotional, ideological, or frustration articulated often by the US side is a passing phenomenon. Important thing is, in my view, that China remains serene, cool-headed, that does not respond to provocations, that China continue to be an element for stability and peace in the region.
Mr. President, you talk about our human history marked, unfortunately and tragically, by wars, proxy wars, sanctions, power struggles. At this point in time, do you think the Chinese solutions, the Chinese proposals, somehow can offer a viable alternative path to a more prosperous and peaceful and equal world? By that, I mean President Xi's Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative, and of course his proposal building a community of shared future for mankind.
The concept of a community of shared future articulated by President Xi Jinping, I have read it and I endorse 100%. How to implement it, to realize this, and we should stay more focused. Pick 5 absolute priorities in the third world global south. One is clean water for everybody, because there is serious water scarcity in the world. Look at sanitation, because it's the lack of sanitation that kills millions of children around the world because of bacteria, because of all kinds of diseases that affect their growth. So one absolute priority, reforestation and general cleaning up of our forests. Renewable energy, which is already underway anyway, and China is a global leader.
You spoke at COP28, right, in Dubai, the UAE.
I was there for COP28.
And you spoke about this very important concept, asking people to take a new outlook on the link between climate and security. You said the world needs a just energy transition in developing states that rely heavily on oil and gas in order to prevent turmoil and unrest. Can you elaborate for us, why did you bring up this concept of a just energy transition?
Because some in the West, whether environmentalist groups, whom I commend, and some in government, they seem to forget that it was the West that rapaciously used coal and all other non-renewable energy to reach where we have reached, the devastation of the planet. It was the West that benefited the most from the industrial revolutions, benefited the most from coal extraction, forest logging, and all of that. So they are the ones who should use their wealth to rebuild the planet without expecting or lecturing us in the third world. Timor-Leste, we are a very small oil and gas producing country. Particular gas, we are not going to stop the development of our potential gas resources because we need for our survival. But at the same time, we are already also looking at renewable gradually. But the richer countries have to support without preconditions, without conditionalities, the transition of the developing countries towards renewable over several decades. For us, a fair, just transition to renewable is precisely this. But so far, we have seen a lot of talk, a lot of pledges, but still very little money actually delivered to the global south. And when the money is available, the formalities, the layers of bureaucracy is such that we are bogged down by all the bureaucracy and conditionalities imposed by the rich countries.
In May 2022, Jose Ramos Horta assumed the presidency of Timor-Leste for the second time. Dedicated to the cause of national liberation and independence, Jose Ramos Horta has aspired to build Timor-Leste into an island of peace, tranquility, and inclusiveness. Domestically, he promotes dialogue and communication to maintain national unity and social stability, while strengthening cooperation and actively integrating into the multilateral system internationally. Timor-Leste is a member of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and a participant in the Belt and Road Initiative. In February 2023, Timor-Leste joined the World Trade Organization, becoming its 166th member. Promoting the country's accession to ASEAN has also been a long-term goal of Jose Ramos Horta.
Mr. President, I'm going to borrow your kindness in saying a few words to the Chinese viewers because we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
The great nation of yours, thousands of years of civilization, of history, of war, of triumph. What a great country you are, of hard-working people, of people who are present all over the world. Probably one of the people who are more present in the world. And not only now, going back many centuries when Chinese admirals went around the world, and when Chinese merchants went to Timor-Leste in the 14th century, with great reverence that I congratulate Chinese people on these memorable times for China.
President Ramos Horta, thank you for being a good friend of China, and I wish you enjoy the rest of your journey in China.
Thank you. 谢谢.
President Ramos Horta calls for an end to the senseless violence and killing of civilians in war zones. He also addressed the myth that China is a threat to world peace, reminding the manufacturers of those narratives of their own tunnel visions and ideological biases. That's it for this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. I'll see you again next time.